All right, guys, we're actually going to get started very soon, and let me switch over to me. There we go. All right, so let's go get this shindig going, guys. Today's date, December 14th, 2019, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host and most, Will Buchanan, on How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to also make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, this is an adult podcast, which means things of adult nature, language may be heard, and things of a graphic nature may be shown, so viewer discretion is advised. First, got to apologize. I know if you're looking at your clocks right now, it's like, wait a minute, it's 1 o'clock and you're on. Let me first apologize because, we've kind of usually missed our usual time of 10 a.m. to noon. We're all human. It happens. But we're here, so we'll get it going. So for all those that are watching and will be watching, I thank you so much. But let's get to the good news, at least to the point to where I think this is good news.
President Trump on the cusp of impeachment after an historic vote in the House Judiciary Committee, with every Democrat voting yes.
Aye. Ms. Garcia votes aye. Mr. Neguse?
Aye.
Mr. Neguse votes aye.
Every Republican voting no.
Mr. Jordan?
No.
Mr. Jordan votes no. Mr. Buck?
No.
2 articles of impeachment passing. The first one charging the president abused his power by soliciting the interference of a foreign government, Ukraine, in the 2020 U.S. presidential election. Article 2 charging obstruction of Congress for defying subpoenas issued by the House of Representatives. Democratic Chairman Jerry Nadler calling it a solemn and sad day.
For the third time in a little over a century and a half, the House Judiciary Committee has voted articles of impeachment against the president. The House will act expeditiously.
Republicans with their own fiery response.
You don't get to remove a president because you don't like him. They did not produce a scintilla of evidence to support a charge of impeachment.
For his part, President Trump publicly defiant.
It's a witch hunt, it's a sham, it's a hoax.
But sources inside the White House tell NBC News the president does not want the stain of impeachment, though he sees potential advantages heading into 2020.
Fundraising for the Republican Party has gone through the roof. We're setting records. Nobody's ever seen anything like it, because the people are disgusted.
Next, the full House slated to vote Wednesday, and it's expected to pass with Democrats in the majority. If so, the Republican-led Senate decides whether to remove the president, something that's highly unlikely. And tonight, the president's outside attorney, Rudy Giuliani, confirms he met with President Trump today. And while Giuliani did not give any details, he was recently back in Ukraine investigating the Bidens.
Yes, let's think about that for a second. Yes, it is good news. We already sat there and saw it was coming for a long time now, that the inquiry that the Democrats had was eventually going to lead to them forming articles of impeachment, 2 of them being obstruction of justice and abuse of power, when there were so many others that they could have gone along with. Now, of course, for all those that don't know how impeachment works, of course, the House does bring up articles of impeachment. It does go over to the Senate, which acts as a jury to actually hear the arguments, and then from there proceed to vote for impeachment. For all those that we do know, the Senate is unfortunately led by a majority of Republicans, and of course, it doesn't help when Moscow Mitch says this.
There'll be a trial. And the leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, told Fox News he is working closely, he is coordinating with lawyers for Donald Trump. Here he is. Listen to this.
The president's counsel may or may not decide they want to have witnesses. The case is so darn weak coming over from the House. We all know how it's going to end. There's no chance the president's going to be removed from office.
So much for checks and balances and an impartial trial. This is what? It's like the jury chairman admitting he's taking his orders from the defendant's attorneys?
Yeah, it's like the defense attorney and the jury getting together and conspiring and predicting the outcome before even the trial begins, before any witnesses, before any evidence is presented. And that's really unfortunate, John, because the Senate has a separate and independent obligation under the Constitution to be a check and balance on the executive branch. And this is not inspiring in the least bit to see Mitch McConnell pretty much predicting the outcome of the trial even before it's began.
Yeah, I think most people, or a lot of people, assume that this sort of thing would happen anyway. That McConnell, at least behind the scenes, would be bending over backwards for the president. It's astounding, though, I think, that he would actually declare it publicly on television.
Yeah, I think
Yes, it is astounding that Moscow Mitch would go ahead and sit there and say, yeah, we already know how this is going to end. Now, for all those that don't know, the Senate does actually is a jury in impeachment trials, which you think they would be the most impartial group. You would think. I mean, considering the fact that let's keep in mind, the Mueller report, even redacted, still said that there was more than enough, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the president has violated multiple parts of the Constitution. We've also seen the transcripts that he had with Ukraine, that he invoked in foreign power to win an election. He also have seen that, well, he has broken 8 of his 10 campaign promises, including one where, yes, he was caught with adultery while his, Botox of a wife was pregnant. I mean, we can go on, but let's be honest. This is the same Republican Congress that went after Bill Clinton for a blowjob. You'd think they can't even go after President Trump just for this? That just tells you a lot about the side of things they're going with. And trust me, Moscow Mitch, and this is why I said if this is anything that we've learned from anything we learned from our governmental system, the person who's the Senate Majority Leader is literally the wall. Because Moscow Mitch has actually blocked more than 250 bills that have came from Democratic side. Actually, that came from Democratic and independent parties. He's blocked them. But you know what he's passed? Bills that he's behind. Now, if you can't tell me that, if that ain't abuse of power, I don't know what is. Especially given his wife is under investigation for allowing some influences over some government contracts to go to people they know. So again, how in the world are we not at this point of where there needs to be recusal? Moscow Mitch needs to recuse himself from this particular impeachment just because the simple fact of the matter, when a person comes forward and says, oh, well, we're going to coordinate with Trump's lawyers and things of that nature. No, you don't coordinate. You are impartial or supposed to be impartial. So when I hear a Senate Majority Leader say, well, we're going to coordinate with the president's attorneys, I'm going to be like, no, you are the last person that needs to be coordinating anything. Matter of fact, you need to recuse yourself completely, because at this point, this says a lot that we as a society are going to let this pass, because honestly, the man's getting away with murder right now. Don't believe me? This next story, which is still funny to me, because nobody remembers that. Remember, Trump is still trying to make sure his financial records never see the light of day. And trust me, every roadblock that's been put up has been literally put down and not worked out in his favor. The problem is, he did ask the Supreme Court to look into the case, and I cannot believe I'm reporting this.
Has just announced it will hear cases related to President Trump's efforts to stop the release of his financial records. I want to bring in CNN reporter Kara Scannell and CNN Supreme Court analyst Joan Biskupic with us as well. Kara, what can you tell us?
So, Brianna, we just got this news out of the Supreme Court that they are going to hear Donald Trump's appeals to block subpoenas to his accounting firm and to his bank. Now, there were 3 cases that were up before the courts, and they've granted cert in all of them, saying that they will hear them. That has to do with both the Manhattan DA's office. They sent a grand jury to Donald Trump's accounting firm seeking his tax returns. The court said that they will hear that. And they're also going to hear the other appeals where you had the House Democrats wanting to obtain Donald Trump's financial records from his accounting firm and from Deutsche Bank and Capital One, 2 banks that have done business with the family. So the Supreme Court will hear those cases too. That sets up big arguments and debates about presidential immunity as it relates to the grand jury investigation, as well as separation of powers and what Congress oversight can be of the president. Now, the Supreme Court also set a calendar for this, saying that they will hear arguments in these cases in March. That means a decision is likely by June. So in the middle of the presidential campaign, we'll have a decision from the Supreme Court. Now, in the
Yes, the simple fact of the matter is it's the Supreme Court. The fact that Donald Trump had already sat there and said he's going to ask the Supreme Court to step in and block the injunction of allowing his actual financial returns, taxes, and things of that nature to be released to the Democratic House. How? This honestly should not be possible. This, as a president, again, abuse of power, check. Because if I could ask the highest court in the land to sit there and step in on doing something, then I am overstepping my bounds. almost in the same sense where he asked Steve Mnuchin of the Federal Treasury to protect his tax returns. It's almost in the same sense that he's asked multiple people to step in and say, hey, this can't happen. And they'll say he's a private citizen, which we all know. You drop being a private citizen the moment you enter public office. That's just the way it is. And he also said it himself, he released his tax returns. Now, I've said this more times to every Trump supporter I can think of. If his tax returns are so squeaky clean, why is he literally putting up a wall around them? That tells you off the bat that there's some sneaky shit. Bernie Madoff didn't have this type of protection, and if he did, he'd still be walking around thinking he's the smartest man on earth. The thing about it is, yes, there is some inconsistency in terms of tax returns. The New York Times about a few months ago actually was able to get a procurement of 10 years ago of Donald Trump's tax returns, and even then they showed that he reportedly lost billions with a B. He didn't win gain millions, he lost billions with a B. Not to mention every failed business endeavor he has had has ended up in bankruptcies, lawsuits, and lost wages. So, with that being said, it is not too far from us to assume that more than likely those tax returns are going to be a federal prosecutor's gold mine, I would think. But it's only a matter of time before they get released, and there's really nothing he can do about it. But he's pretty much pulling at every string he can and throwing every litigation that he can to make sure it doesn't happen. But let's be honest, it's bound to happen eventually. And it will be interesting, I will say that much. But moving right along, China and the trade deal between China and the U.S., which is Mr. Tariff Man Trump, has decided that, you know what, this is good. And really it's not, because China said, well, we can do that too.
China just announcing a phase 1 trade deal with the United States. Let's get more on this with our David Culver in Beijing. What have they said about the contours of this deal, David? What do we know?
All right, Julie, a lot of breaking developments here. I'm just going to reference a few things because it's just coming in right now. We have a press conference underway with Chinese officials and a presidential tweet from the U.S. side of things. Essentially, both sides have agreed that they have reached a deal here. China calling this achieving major progress. They were a bit vague as to how they describe this deal, but they say essentially it'll include reducing some of the tariffs, and they say on their part, they agreed to buy more agricultural goods. Now, President Trump getting into a little bit more detail. I'm going to read some of his tweet here. He says that not only are they making massive purchases, referring to China, on agricultural products, energy, and manufactured goods, he says the 25% tariffs will remain in place and there will be a reduction in some of the other tariffs. He says they're going to get underway with phase 2 immediately. China disagrees with that. They say we need to implement phase 1 and then we'll go on to phase 2.
Okay, so for all those that think you're watching a Marvel movie, you're not. The phase 1 deal that they're referring to is simple fact of the matter that right now Trump is being hated by farmers because the tariffs has hit the farming industry, especially in the U.S. pretty hard, even to the more so that he's already did not 1 but now 2 bailout packages for farmers. While the rest of us are wondering, you know, it's amazing that we're focused on farmers or anything else. But a little bit about the deal, which they didn't talk about. When they said, you know, because Trump doesn't really believe in numbers unless numbers work for him, because everything else has to be a description of something very big. You know, it's massive, it's very large. I'm clearly thinking the man is overcompensating for something at this point. But the deal itself is that reportedly that China will now buy more than $59 billion of agricultural products from the U.S., which is a slight uptake from what they usually purchase from us of $39 billion. The problem is that during this loss, or I should say during this tariff war that is still going on, the tariff's still going into effect, we've actually lost close to $50 billion in agricultural sales that could have came from China, and they're only buying back 9 more than what they're actually buying 9 less than what we lost. So I'm not a mathematician, but that still feels like a loss to me, and especially with China saying, well, we liked phase 1, and Trump's like, we're gonna go to phase 2, and it's like, China's like, nah, we don't like phase 2. We'll stick with phase 1. It amazes me so that again, what was the whole point of this war? This whole tariff dispute. I still ask that question on a daily basis until someone can give me an answer. To this day, I will still never figure out what was the whole point, the entire point of us basically having a tariff war with China. I have said there and said it before, and I'll say it again. You cannot beat an agricultural, manufacturing power on their own home turf. Let's be honest. Most of our products, components, and things of that nature actually come from China, much less than Taiwan and Japan and the Philippines. They control the manufacturing. They control the product. They control the prices. They control logistics. You can't win against that. You can't win against a country like that. That pretty much corners the market. You can only deal with them, but you can't really lord over them. And let's be honest, Trump being a successful businessman, yeah, that's full of shit. But at the same time, again, what was the whole point of this tariff war? I mean, we didn't gain anything. We actually lost ground. And at this point, it's almost as if we're not already seen as the laughing stock of most international communities. We're starting to really look like it's starting to really like we elected the special kid to the head of the class, to be honest with you. And speaking of special, first wife, overall bitch, Melania Trump decided to come out and support her husband, just not in the way you think.
Times Person of the Year, targeting 16-year-old climate activist Greta Thunberg. Overnight, former First Lady Michelle Obama defending her. And now tonight, we're hearing from First Lady Melania Trump. Here's Kara Phillips.
Tonight, First Lady Melania Trump weighing in after her husband attacked 16-year-old climate change activist Greta Thunberg.
World leaders are still trying to run away from their responsibilities.
President Trump lashing out after the teenager was named Times Person of the Year. So ridiculous, he tweeted. Greta must work on her anger management problem, then go to a good old-fashioned movie with a friend. Chill, Greta, chill. And he's done it before, taking aim at Thunberg, who has Asperger's syndrome, a form of autism, after her passionate speech at the UN.
You all come to us young people for hope. How dare you?
Trump's response? She seems like a very happy young girl looking forward to a bright and wonderful future. So nice to see. Now, former First Lady Michelle Obama giving Thunberg a boost, tweeting, "Don't let anyone dim your light. Ignore the doubters and know that millions of people are cheering you on." And we're hearing from the current First Lady, who has made cyberbullying her signature issue.
Be Best, an awareness campaign dedicated to the most valuable and fragile among us, our children.
But Melania Trump's spokeswoman would only say this about the president's words. The president and First Lady often communicate differently, as most married couples do. The First Lady has been quick to object when people make comments about her own teenage son, Barron. Her spokeswoman telling CNN this is different because Barron is not an activist who travels the globe giving speeches. He is a 13-year-old who wants and deserves privacy.
And now we saw the First Lady last week and her Be Best ornaments on the White House Christmas trees. But when it comes to her husband's attacks on Greta Thunberg, Mrs. Trump is not criticizing her husband's words.
And by not criticizing, I mean she is not saying shit. I'm sorry. I don't usually like to throw around the word bitch a lot, but let's be honest. That's pretty much what the First Lady is. I mean, the whole thing about her the Be Best campaign, which is against cyberbullying, and everybody's like, oh, wonderful, start with your husband. Especially the fact that your husband literally criticized a 16-year-old kid. I'm sorry, 13-year-old. I think she's 16. I think she's 16. He criticized a 16-year-old. Think about this. A grown-ass man who throws temper tantrums like a 5-year-old is going to criticize somebody who is much more aware of their surroundings and is on a platform to talk about climate change and that we need to have immediate changes done to it. You're going to literally sit there, watch your husband berate this young woman, and then you're going to go, well, the president and I communicate differently. Aren't you on this Be Best bullshit? I mean, literally, this is your whole thing, cyberbullying and whatnot. And I'm like, your husband is literally the picture boy for it, and yet you choose not to say anything. I mean, it's almost to the point where it's like, Wow, I never thought I'd see a stepper wife as a first lady, but apparently they exist. But again, this just goes to show you how much crock of shit, honestly, Melania Trump is. And at the same time, the fact that she's trying to use her son as a comparison really mystifies me, because President Obama's daughters didn't get that same level of privacy. Everything that they did and was out and about was pictured, criticized, and analyzed by Fox News. You're gonna sit there and tell me that, Barron Trump's gonna get that same privacy? He shouldn't. I mean, you went after two black girls that they grew up in the White House. What's the difference between this white boy? I'm just saying. But again, I shouldn't be surprised that she's not gonna sit there and say her husband was in the wrong. She's not gonna sit there and say anything about her husband. She's gonna be silent, just like they were when she first got pulled over on a genius visa. And yet I still wonder about that. But anyway, speaking of other things that are fucked up, and apparently from the state of Kentucky, which is starting to be on par with Florida, the former Kentucky governor decided to do something that, well, stinks and reeks of controversy.
Kentucky Governor Matt Bevin issued more than 400 pardons and commutations on the way out. Among those pardoned, a convicted rapist and a convicted murderer whose family reportedly raised thousands for the governor. Here's Lindsay Davis.
In sharp contrast to the hugs and applause for outgoing Kentucky Governor Matt Bevin,
we truly do live in the greatest nation.
Outrage tonight because after walking out of office, hundreds of convicted felons are walking out of prison, some violent offenders. Among Bevin's 428 pardons, Micah Shodel, who'd been convicted of raping a 9-year-old girl.
Fear, anger, rage, confusion.
That child's mother, who did not want to be identified, says she struggled to tell her daughter.
It feels like we're going through it all over again.
But Bevin said he didn't believe the victim's accusations were true and that the case relied more on testimony than physical evidence. Also pardoned Patrick Baker, who shot and killed a man in front of his wife. While the accomplices remained behind bars, Baker, whose family, according to the Courier-Journal, raised more than $20,000 for Bevin's campaign, is now free. The governor seen here at a fundraiser hosted by Baker's brother. In the pardoning document, Bevin wrote the evidence against Baker was sketchy at best.
Several Kentucky lawmakers are now calling on the incoming attorney general to investigate these pardons. We also heard from Bevin today in the form of a tweet where he said, among other things, that America is a country based on the belief in redemption. David?
Ah, yes, the pure conservative saying. Everything has redemption. Even when you raped a 9-year-old girl, you can still be redeemed. Even if you've killed somebody in cold blood, you can still be redeemed. And apparently, if your family can raise enough money to the former governor's campaign fund, you yourself can be pardoned. Right. And again, this is all after this one guy who didn't want to give up his seat in Kentucky, basically because of what actually happened. Of course, he tried to do a recount. He was trying to do a recount. The recount looked like it wasn't going in his favor. He finally conceded. And as his last act as Kentucky governor, he decided to go ahead and just say, oh, we're just going to pardon everybody whose family contributed to me. Even though they've had sick and heinous crimes, I got the money. They can get out. That tells you alone about how messed up that we have some people in our offices that if you donate a little bit of money to them, that they can literally get out anybody. I mean, don't get me wrong, the governor does have the ability to pardon or stay of executions, but at the same time, these two in question off the bat should tell us a lot that, there are some people out there that, like I said, if you got enough money, why do you think people joke about when they say, hey, if you got enough money, you honestly can get out of anything? Unfortunately, that seems to be more true or more than most. But again, I hope that the Attorney General does come in, and if there is, and like I said, there's a connection because the families that donated to this man's campaign are related to the inmates that were just pardoned. I do believe those pardons need to be reversed. And more than likely, the government needs to be investigated because, let's be honest, you just don't pardon a serial killer unless his family has money. I'm just saying. But speaking of things that are messed up, well, again, this is where I'm going to point this out. If it plays.
Same day, Harvey Weinstein used a walker to enter the court where he's facing criminal charges, a potential $25 million settlement with the more than 30 actresses and other accusers who filed civil suits against the former movie producer, according to the New York Times. The Times saying Weinstein would not admit any wrongdoing and he wouldn't pay accusers, but insurance companies for his former studio, which filed for bankruptcy, would make the payout.
He'll be able to basically walk away from almost all of those cases without paying any of his own money to those victims.
A quarter of the overall settlement, according to the Times, would pay lawyers for Weinstein and his former company. Accuser Zoe Brock tells NBC News, "This settlement breaks my heart. I have signed it only because I have explored every other legal option and at this point have found no alternative." The advocacy group Time's Up also panning the deal as too little. If this is the best the survivors could get, the system is broken.
There are also women who are relieved, who feel like, listen, there was, as these legal negotiations went on and the pot of money that was going to go towards them got smaller and smaller, there were concerns of whether or not there would be any civil settlement reached.
The New York Times reports several high-profile accusers would not be part of the settlement. Weinstein's attorneys declined to comment on the potential settlement. He has pleaded not guilty to all criminal charges. Earlier today, a judge raised his bail after criminal prosecutors said he tampered with his electronic ankle monitor more than 50 times. A Weinstein attorney told the criminal court he's having back surgery tomorrow, and they insist he'll show up for trial on January 6th.
So, Kate, this is a settlement in the works, meaning it's not a done deal?
It's not a done deal yet. The New York Times reporting that it would have to be approved by judges, and with some lawyers for accusers already objecting, it's possible.
Okay, how? That'd be the question I'm asking. How is this possible? Harvey Weinstein, literally the guy that was the face of the Me Too and Time's Up movement, who had multiple accusers come forward and say that he pretty much propositioned sexual favors to them to get in movies. Of all of these things, kicked out of his own company, the company that was his insurance claimed bankruptcy. How? That literally there is theoretically he can walk. Now, I know what a lot of you guys are thinking. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Bill Cosby, again, they went after this man hard. They went after R. Kelly hard. They didn't go after Kevin Spacey, who, again, had a few of his cases dropped. Some of the charges have been dropped. There's still a few pending against him. You still have Jeremy Piven, who, again, his cases have been dropped. You still have Harvey Weinstein, which at this point, it looks like a majority of his cases will be dropped. Seriously, how? Because the only thing I can think of, and I'm just going to be just flat honest and be perspective here, they wanted to get certain high-profile people with money and influences and things of that nature. That's the only thing I can think of, because in my mind, there's no difference between Bill Cosby and Harvey Weinstein, except the fact that Bill Cosby's in jail. Harvey Weinstein is now free. Harvey Weinstein is and still was free. The man never did spend time in jail. Again, it just amazes me so. It amazes me so that how in the world can we justify one and condemn the other? Considering the fact that, if you really want to be honest, the only thing that actually did Cosby in was the fact that his story just kept on getting reiterated and reiterated. Although it was a he said, she said argument at this point because there was no evidence, that was the only way they can get him. They had to lean upon the strength of the jury in order to convict him. Harvey Weinstein, however, is in the same boat. And yet, he's about to walk free. Not only about to walk free, but about to not pay a dime of his own money to these accusers, to his accusers, because his former insurance company is going to make those payments. How? I mean, like I said before, I understand that sexual assault can happen and things of that nature can happen. This isn't justice. This really isn't. Harvey Weinstein needs to go the same route. If you did it for Bill Cosby, you can do it for Harvey Weinstein. They need to have that that they be put under the same microscope and scrutinized. That's the way it should be. Now, unfortunately, and we're not going to get that, and it's honestly fucking sad. And at this point, it's almost like, why do people just honestly, I mean, just really, it's almost going to be a what the point moment. If you know, if the person who's accused has the means and necessary and has the means to pretty much buy or legalate or just really just muzzle their way out of any charge, it's almost going to be a what is the point moment. Where's the justice for the victims, I should say, because you got Bill Cosby on he said, she said. You can't get Harvey Weinstein the same way. That's fucked up. Aside from that, our next last story, guys, is basically blacks in corporate America, which is interesting because this actual article I found says that pretty much the study Blacks Corporate America was conducted by the National Opinion Research Center at the University of Chicago. If I could speak, that'd be great. Had sat there and said blacks represent less than 1% of Fortune 500 CEOs. With blacks making up 10% of college graduates, you'd think there would be 50 black CEOs, but there are only 4. Only 3.2% of executives and senior manager level employees are African American. On average, 58% of blacks indicate they feel racism on their jobs. The Midwest having the highest percentage at 79%, and the Northeast at the lowest at 44%. Also, 38% of black millennials say they are considering leaving their jobs to start their own companies. Let's think about this for a second, because honestly, I can relate to all 4 things of the key findings that they said. Where they sat there and they literally sat there and said that only 3.2% of executives and senior manager level employees are African American. At the place that I work at currently, I can tell you that is definitely true. 58% of blacks feel they feel racism on their jobs. Yeah, I'll admit that I do actually feel a little bit. I do actually feel that at my job too. And they say they're leaving jobs to start their own company. Now, don't get me wrong. I love business starting, especially black businesses starting, as we need to have more, because that's really where we actually can be great as far as starting our own. Because I always believe that you're not gonna get far asking at somebody's table. Sometimes you gotta get out and build your own goddamn table. But the story itself of the study just goes to show that it's amazing how much we make up of other areas, especially in sports and entertainment. But when it comes to the actual job world, we actually are a very small part of higher areas. I mean, if you go into a local job force, yeah, it does increase as far as that goes, but always in lower level tier jobs. It's never in the higher up tier jobs. Like I said, there was actually a story not too long ago where I forgot. Former President Obama did actually meet with bank heads of certain places and sat there and said, because they were all white, and it says, would you hire a person of color to be the next CEO? Raise your hand. Not one person in that room raised their hand. That tells you everything about perspective. For example, I would love to see a guy like me be like CEO. Like, I'll be honest with you. Like, my dream, as far as making this podcast become something more than what itself, I'd love to be the first CEO that you see with locks. I know my hair is kind of fucked up right now, and I apologize for that. But yeah, I want to be able to look. I mean, perception is everything. Perception representation is everything. I want to be able for another black kid, to be able to look up and see a black man who has hair like this and is a CEO and sit there and say, I can relate to that. In the same sense where a lot of us, if you grew up on Star Trek, was able to see black people in certain roles, and it inspires you. I mean, that's just the way it should be. We should be able to look forward to role models in areas we want to go and say, yeah, that's where I want to go. That's where I want to be. That's how it should be. Do I think it's going to happen anytime soon? That's going to be another question for another day. But honestly, I mean, I like that story just because it does explain the truth. And for some people that don't want to hear it, well, you're part of the problem. So that's really all the stories that we got, guys. So I'm just going to move on to our feel-good segment. Like I said before, we cover a lot on how the Frack We Got Here. And it's usually sometimes doom and gloom and news like that. But we try to actually, because of the weekend, we try to actually find some good stories, some great stories, and really leave you with a good note, leave you with a good feeling of things of that nature. And this one story I actually watched initially on the Video Game Awards. Excuse me, if I could talk, that'd be great. This one cat who literally is a refugee developed a game that pretty much shows a different side of the world that we're experiencing. And I'm actually going to play the trailer. I'm going to play a little bit from it where he explains it, and then we're going to go a little bit more into the story.
efforts teamed up with Facebook Gaming to honor global gaming citizens, people from all areas of gaming who use the power of games to create a positive influence. Tonight, I'm joined by one of the global gaming citizens we met last year who has a new project to show us. Please welcome Lual Mayen.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah.
So Lual, what have you been working on?
Yeah, for sure. As someone from Africa and also as a refugee, I want to thank everybody that has been supporting me to come up with a game today. Facebook Gaming, Eisenberg, and Lual Deng. I've been working on a game that actually put a player in the shoes of a refugee. It's a game that actually talk about journey and helping people to understand the empathy. And this is something that video game can be able to do around the world. We can be able to change the world and help people around the world and see whatever they're going through playing video game. So it's a game really that put a player in the shoes of refugees and bridging the reality world and what is actually happening on the ground. So I'm really so excited about the project. Yeah.
Incredible. Well, let's take a look.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I create Salam because games are very powerful to create empathy and to help people understand the journey of a refugee. Growing up in a refugee camp, my mother spent 3 years looking for $300 to buy a computer. And then I taught myself how to create a video game. My mission in creating Salam is to let the world know what it's like to be a refugee. When you buy medicine and food in the game, it goes to real refugees like me. Together, we can take small steps to make a big difference.
And honestly, I thought that was cool. Basically, that guy, like you said, which his name, and forgive me if I mispronounce this, Lual Mayen, is really from, his family is from South Sudan. For everybody that doesn't know about Sudan, it isn't an easy country to live in. I'll tell you that much, because because of ongoing wars between warlords and things of that nature. And as his story was said, his mom did actually buy him a computer, and from there he eventually did become a video game developer. And his game that he showed, especially the video game awards this past week, was that just wanting to see from the life of a refugee, and that to actually give some perspective and actually for others to be able to see what actually a little bit of what unfortunately they have to deal with. And so, and I do love the fact that part of the game, if you're buying things, that's buying things that actually goes toward real life assistance for refugees in those countries. That to me is what actually grabbed me more, was that not only was this cat from South Sudan that was actually doing this, it was also the simple fact of the matter just that it's a gaming for a purpose, which I'll always be behind that. So I just want to give that man props for that, because like I said, for him to be able to sit there and show that, and for that to be relevant, still is relevant to this day in 2019, the last days of 2019 as we see it, it becomes all the more relevant that pretty much we do need to try to do more, and he is trying to do his part, and gotta give him kudos for that. But speaking of kudos, you guys ever get robocalls? And you know the robocalls where if you got a loan or a credit card, or that Nigerian prince just won't leave you alone. Well, this guy literally thought he was getting a robocall, but turns out he was actually getting a second chance. He was a second chance winner of $1 million, and he's kind of glad he answered his phone, because he pretty much sat there and thought it was a robocall until he realized it was the North Carolina Education Lottery, pretty much telling him that he just won a second chance winning at $1 million lottery. So, of course, he was excited and whatnot. He had the choice of taking home a lump sum of $600,000 or a $1 million annuity within 20 payments of $50,000 a year. He chose the lump sum and took home $424,500 after taxes, according to the lottery. Now, the one thing I will point out about this, like I said, it's always great to see people getting great things and things of that nature. I thought about that. Which one would you actually take? You want $1 million of annuity, which means 20 payments of $50,000 a year. So for 20 years, you've got a guaranteed $50,000. Or you could take the home lump sum of $600,000 and $424,500, which means that the government is taking, hang on guys, I'm trying to do math in my head right now. 165,500. Okay, on a side note, how the fuck can we still get the government? The government. Okay, small rant. The government isn't there to help you buy your lottery ticket, but yet they're there when you win. They're not there when you lose, but they're there when you win. But they're not there when you buy the ticket. And yet they take out close to about 165,000 some change out of a $600,000 lottery pot. Don't get me wrong, it's still 424,000 you didn't have. But damn, at that point I would have just took the $1 million annuity at 20 payments, $50,000 a year. But again, you're paying taxes on that $50,000 every year for the next 20 years. Yeah, you know, even when you win, you still got to pay something, I guess. Damn. But anyway, that was meant to be a good news story. That was meant to be a good news story. But kudos to the guy on this, and you know, like I said, hey, it's 400 grand you didn't have, so definitely kudos to you on that. Aside from that, the last feel good news segment I have is something I am very freaking jealous of, and I say I'm jealous of it. Oh, damn it! There we go. Woo. You ever had something that started playing and you didn't want it to play yet? Yeah, that just happened to me. So this last story that I got, I admit I'm very jealous of because I better just play it. It's better to play it.
I steer the boat, but they're the ones that run the boat. They're the ones that make the boat go. Without the team, we are nothing. We are absolutely nothing.
I just realized I've been on mute for like the last 30 minutes. Okay. Oh, wow. I don't know how much of that got said. So let's go ahead and do it all over again because I just realized I've been off mute this entire time. Okay. Oh, wow. I just went through the whole entire intro and didn't realize I've been on mute this entire doggone time. Okay. Let me do that again, and I apologize. First off, let me say thank you for everybody who's watching, who has watched this podcast so far. I appreciate it. I apologize for technical difficulties. I promise I will be better next week. I still can't believe I was on mute the whole entire doggone time. I thought I was doing great. So let me go ahead and get this out because, like I said before, I'm not sure how much that got in, so we're just going to go ahead and repeat it again. And if you heard it before, you'll hear it again. I'm not the only cat that actually has podcasts out here. I do have several brethren of mine that actually have podcasts of their own from our group Table of Bosses because we're all about putting people in position, put people in position. We're trying to make this umbrella tent into a circus tent, which means we're trying to make it a big top for all is what I'm going with. I'll first start with Vaughn, A.Witherspoon on Facebook, BigBZA on YouTube, has several podcasts of his own. He actually has the VST, which the VST is a news podcast. That news can be music, video games, or trailers, as he loves to say. Interactive show, just like mine. He also has Rhythmness, where you can reminisce over the rhythm, in which he goes over albums past and present, graded to a 4-tier rating system. I myself happen to like some things on there, and most things I don't like. But hey, everybody has different tastes. But also an interactive show. He also has Random as Fuck with Uncle VZ, who has Random as Fuck. Random as Fuck is the pool of ratchets we sometimes dip our toes into to take a break from life and have a chuckle at things. Some of it can be funny, some of it can make you cry, some of it can make you scratch your head. Like I said before many times, if you go to worldstarhiphop.com, look up Burger King on Fire, you will not be disappointed at all. But all of his shows can be found under his Facebook page. You go to A.Witherspoon and be able to see the calendar of when all his podcasts go live. You can also go to his YouTube page at bigbza.podcast and be able to see every podcast he's done so far from there. My other brother from Mother Trace Brown, King Eddie Wayne on Facebook, has several podcasts of his own. The first one is the Bump Down, with his music, culture, knowledge, and numbers, in which he goes over chart work. He goes over what's coming up and what's coming down. Also, all upcoming artists that he's working with. If you yourself are an upcoming artist that wants to hear your music played on Trace's Bump Down or Vaughn's Rhythmness, please reach out to Trace or Vaughn on Facebook and they'll give you the details on how you can do so. We only thing ask that you just want us to bring us your fire, because you never know who might be listening or what opportunities may come around the door, but you definitely want to make sure you're showing your best. Aside from the Bump Down, Trace also leads into the Smoke of Truth, what I like they call it the Check Your Ego, No Angels Dear, Fair Dear to Tread podcast. And I've said it before many times, Trace is a very unorthodox individual, but a very intelligent individual. And he does bring a unique perspective to a lot of subjects that I believe needs to have a voice to it. So if you're willing to have that conversation, and then definitely willing to go there, then Trace's Smoke of Truth podcast is definitely for you. His podcast can be found under his Facebook page, that is King Eddie Wayne, or on his YouTube page at DJ King Eddie Wayne, to be able to see every podcast he's done so far. My other brother from another mother, who will probably be on here very soon, will be Thomas Reed, aka the Mountain Puncher. He has several podcasts of his own. He actually has one podcast. He's actually working on other ones, but he procrastinates. Has actually several podcasts of his own. The first one is basically the To Be Determined podcast. What is To Be Determined? Well, he likes to work out. If you've seen Thomas Reed on Facebook, you know that all this fool does is work out. Sometimes I'm right there beside him. Sometimes I'm just shaking my head because he needs to hire a cameraman. But anyway, he loves talking about fitness. He loves talking about what workouts work and what workouts may not work, how to do nutrition, things of that nature, and various subjects that you might find interesting in the gym world. Like the personal trainer that's just a little bit too close to his female clients. You know who you are. But again, his To Be Determined will be every Saturday at 3 p.m. on Facebook Live. So if you go to Thomas Reed on Facebook or his YouTube page, the number 2, the letter T, the letter B, the letter D, that is 2TBD. Unique name, but interesting podcast. Which also can be found on YouTube. Well, it can be found on YouTube to see every podcast he's done from there. Now, as for myself, of course, How the Frack We Got Here is every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon. I know a lot of you guys looking at your times on your clocks, and like, yes, I apologize, slightly late. But yes, we still will maintain the 10 a.m. to noon time for How the Frack We Got Here. And of course, our podcast a little bit later on tonight between 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. will be the How the Frack We Got Here, in which we definitely are the podcast that goes there as far as having those uncomfortable conversations, but also having a modern civilized discussion to where people are actually listening to each other and not trying to ram their opinion down people's throats, because I truly believe that we can actually reintroduce modern discussion over anything. We just have to be willing to do it with those that are willing to do it with us. So again, Off Limits Podcast will be tonight on my YouTube page. Actually, I should say on my Facebook page, which is William Buchanan, which I have been told that's been very easy to find. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. And also on my YouTube page for How the Frack We Got Here, which is basically if you type in How the Frack We Got Here on YouTube page, we'll take you to my How the Frack We Got Here page. And of course, if you look up Off Limits Podcast, we'll also take you to the Off Limits Podcast page and be able to see it from there as well. And also, finally, this Sunday from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. will be my Get Bit podcast. What is Get Bit? Get Bit is pretty much a podcast that me and the Mountain Puncher have, in which we talk about everything blurty and nerdy. We talk about movies. We talk about video games. We talk about anime and cartoons. We talk about Comic-Cons and things of that nature. We try to cover a lot of subjects within that hour, because we truly believe that there's a missing voice when it comes to the black side of nerd things and nerd and blurred things, and that's why we did introduce Get Bit. So we hope you do listen to, which also can be seen on my Facebook page. Again, that's William Buchanan. And of course, the Get Bit, as long as you put GITBIT in the YouTube, you'll be able to get to that page as well. And finally, my other brother from another mother, Wingnut Gaming, actually has several podcasts, a podcast of his own. He actually has a gaming channel. If you go on Facebook Live, you'll be able to look up Wingnut Gaming. He is a guy that loves first-person shooters, that honestly loves Battlefield 5, loves Call of Duty, loves Apex Legends, loves I almost forgot the game again. Borderlands. I am really having a memory problem today. He loves Borderlands 3, but pretty much he also loves to be able to just conversate and be able to talk and play with people at the same time. So if you're that kind of cat that loves to do the same thing, then Wingnut Gaming is for you. So if you go on Facebook, if you ever go on Facebook, pull up Wingnut Gaming, like, share, and subscribe from there, as well as all of our content, because like I said, we're all about trying to make this entire conglomerate bigger and better. And like I said, we can't do that without you. So let me finally also say, before we do wrap this up, thank you to everybody who has watched, who has liked, who has commented, who has shared, who has started watch parties, who has went to the YouTube channel, liked and shared and subscribed from there. I cannot thank you enough and will not stop thanking you, just because, like I said, I'm trying to build this into something that really could become my job. I really would like to do that. But I'm just trying to build it into something bigger and better. And like I always say at the end of all these things, if you like what you saw, please let me know. If you didn't like what you saw, please let me know. I am all about open and equal criticism. At the same time, I'm trying to make the show better to where it's being more received. It's stories that you matter about and things of that nature, or stories that really don't get a lot of attention that I try to cover. But anyway, any and all input is always appreciated and accepted and will always be thanked. No matter whether it's positive or negative, I pretty much take it all. That's what she said. But that being said, guys, the only thing I'll say about How the Frack We Got Here is, like I said, it's all about staying informed. Staying informed means that you're not accepting anything at face value. You are literally going beyond that. You are looking into the truth with reputable sources, and hopefully you're giving back with things that you found with someone else in order to inspire them to do the same. So I've always said it best, that an informed community can make a lot better decisions than an uninformed one, because an uninformed one got us trumped, and that's how the Frack We Got Here. Again, guys, thank you all so much for watching and putting up with me as I forgot that I put myself on mute for 5 minutes and redid the whole outro all over again. But thank you guys for all watching. Like I said, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll go from there and hopefully make this a bigger thing. Have a great weekend, guys.